concentrate with all them kids laughing. And she took off, and we were all like, holy crap, you know. But, you know, meditation is not about isolating yourself. It's about living in the real world, you know. There's that old story about the guy in New York that's trying to study meditation, and helicopters are flying over his apartment, and he can hear his next door neighbor in the bathroom and flushing the toilet, and the other neighbor, he can hear them talking, and he can hear the traffic. And so he sells everything that he owns, and he goes all the way to some remote place in India, and he goes out in the forest, and he finds a cave, and he spends hours cleaning the cave out, you know, and he's like, I'm finally going to learn how to meditate. I'm going to devote my life to this. Finally away from New York, and he sits down in the opening of the cave, and he sits down and gets quiet, and a bird from the tree, you know, like, oh my God, you know. So, you know, meditation is not about escaping life. It's about embracing life, you know. All of this that we're doing here is about learning how to be in life better, how to perfect our thoughts, you know. It's not about blissing out and your eyes rolling back in your head and becoming a ninja or something. It's just about being a better version of yourself. Amen, brothers and sisters? All right, let's see what old Shantideva is talking about now. So as we were talking about before, bodhicitta is like this wild messianic vision of becoming enlightened yourself so you can help others. In fact, the Bodhisattva prayer, you know the Bodhisattva prayer? There's many versions of it. But a Bodhisattva is someone, we're all Bodhisattvas in training, right? We all want to help others. We want to generate loving kindness and so forth. But, I can explain that a little bit better. But a Bodhisattva's prayer is, as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Anybody have any idea what that could mean? As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world.
You will continually return to teach the Dharma until everybody is...
I can't hear you. Speaking too loud.
That you'll continually return as a teacher of the Dharma until everybody has been reached enlightenment.
Yes.
Reached Buddhahood.
Right. So as Malcolm was saying earlier about a Buddha runs out of karma. So that's why he escapes the will of rebirth. It's just because he's in a state where he's not producing negative or positive karma. Right? And so he's off the will of rebirth. A Bodhisattva says, I want to attain enlightenment, like, you know, wisdom, transcendental wisdom or whatever, the perfection of wisdom, but I want to keep coming back and being reborn so I can help other people. Does that make any sense? And so as far as a bodhisattva, they say it's actually a career. So we are bodhisattvas in training. You may look like a radiologist, but that's just a disguise. Your real career is a bodhisattva, right? And you may look like a masseuse, right? Is that the right term?
Massage therapy.
Massage therapist, okay. Does anybody say masseuse anymore? Or is that...
It is like downgrading because some people, you know, do massage other...
Oh, forms of it?
Yes. So the specific term is massage therapist.
Okay, I didn't mean to offend you.
No.
It's okay. I mean,
A moose?
I'm teaching you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So yeah, you might look like a massage therapist, but actually you're in a disguise. You're a bodhisattva in disguise, right?
Yes.
And so that's what Shantideva is saying. You might think you're here or doing these things, but in reality, you're undercover. You're an undercover brother for Buddha, right? And that's, for some reason, there's some kind of karmic connection for why you're hearing this teaching and why you're remembering now why you chose to come back to learn more about bodhicitta. Does that make sense? Okay, so there's three versions of Bodhisattva. Some Bodhisattvas, it's like a king. You want to be a great ruler. You want to be as wise as you can to lead your people, to be the leader of your people, right? And so a Bodhisattva wants to get as much knowledge and as much wisdom as quickly as possible so that he can be like a good king, like a beneficial king, and lead everyone to enlightenment. And there's also the ferry boat person who is loading everyone in the world onto this ferry boat. And the Bodhisattva is like the captain that takes them all across the ocean of suffering to the other side, where they're gonna escape this being born again over and over and over. And so he's not going until everybody gets on the ferry and they all go together, and that's when they all get off the wheel of reincarnation. And then the other one is the shepherd. So just like a shepherd goes out and he spends all day gathering his sheep, one's up in a tree, one's in a ledge, and one's under a bush, and he's spent all these multiple lifetimes gathering the flock together, and then he's going to lead them. The Bodhisattva is going to lead them like a shepherd to greener pastures, which is enlightenment, nirvana, off the wheel of rebirth. But Shantideva says, first and foremost, if you're going to be a Bodhisattva in training, you have to train your mind first. Shantideva says, and for him or her who has perfectly seized the mind with the thought to never turn away from bodhicitta, from totally liberating the infinite forms of life, from that time hence, even while asleep or unconcerned, a force of merit is being generated as big and as perpetual as the sky. They're saying that once you make that decision to become a bodhisattva in training, and and there's actually something called a bodhisattva vow, and I took mine a long time ago by myself in my front yard, in the dark. It was like it was on Christmas Eve, a long time ago. New Year's Eve, and I've been reading about this, thinking about this. Of course, I was working with my lama and stuff like that, and I just kind of one night I felt moved to walk outside in the dark, and there's a fence and there's a field. I walked out to the fence, and I just sat there and really thought about what a bodhisattva was, and then I just closed my eyes and I prayed the bodhisattva prayer. But it's like huge, like to say. Now, there's thoughts that we generate our own reality with our minds, right? So there is a possibility that whatever you believe about the afterlife, you might produce that with your mind. We don't know. Nobody knows, If you're a Christian, you really believe in heaven, you might produce that with your mind. We know from quantum physics that none of this is real anyway. It's all broken down to smaller things. Everything is fluctuating energy. So for all we know, whatever this is, this intelligence or this consciousness, it may generate a whole nother world for us when we die. And if you're a Christian, you go to Christian heaven. If you're Buddhist or Muslim or Jewish or whatever, who knows, So for me, I had to say, regardless of all this is true, that there's a chance that I'm going to generate this world again full of suffering beings, and I choose to come back there to help others over and over and over. So it's kind of a serious thing. It's not to be taken lightly. So it says, for the sake of those inclined towards the lesser vehicle is like it's the first monks, the Theravadan monks were the disciples of Buddha during his lifetime, and they were intent on self-liberation. They wanted to get liberated but not tell anybody about it. They weren't so much into helping others. Am I right, Malcolm?
Help yourself before you
help
others.
Well, yeah, but they were trying to get off the wheel of rebirth. Yeah. They weren't trying to come back.
Yeah, exactly.
But it says here, Shantideva says that Buddha actually told them in a certain sutra about bodhicitta. There's a famous lama named Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, And he talks about this sutra that Shantideva is talking about, where the Buddha told the Theravadins about bodhicitta. And in the sutra, Buddha says to the elders, these monks during his time, he said, the mind is like lightning, like wind, like clouds, like waves on a giant ocean. They're cunning, indulging in everything it desires, moving and straying. You must tell yourself, no matter what in this very life, I will tame it. So he's saying, you want to do good for others, you want to think positive thoughts, but it's all about purifying. First of all, it's setting your butt on that cushion. It's about doing walking meditation. It's about doing the chanting. It's about a daily practice, weekly practice, monthly practice, yearly practice, day in and day out, purifying your own mind, rooting out that ego, and focusing your attention on loving kindness, generosity, compassion, and sharing that with the world. But it first comes from training yourself. And basically, you could say that this religion is Buddhism or Mahayana or Tibetan, but in reality, it has no name. Buddha wasn't a Buddhist, just like they say Jesus wasn't a Christian. Buddha came to preach a message about purifying our own minds so that we could generate enough merit to help other people, and that has no name. So Khyentse Rinpoche is saying that before you even think about being a bodhisattva, the first thing is getting your butt on the cushion and purifying your mind. It says, to achieve perfect bodhicitta, to receive all its benefits, you first have to control your mind. That is why the practice of meditation is very important, because meditation changes your perception of the world and the perception you have of yourself. We know that happiness and perhaps enlightenment itself is a change in perception, away from our own needs to the needs of others. So, does anybody know what I mean by saying that meditation improves your thought life and changes your perception of the world? Can anybody tell me about that?
When I was in India in last fall, I had the chance to have a personal audience with the Dalai Lama because I was in the town where he lives when he happened to be coming back into town. So me and my friends reached out, and it was cool because there was a bunch of people who were getting audiences that day. They all went up in a big line, basically to get his blessing and to talk with him for a short period of time. And in each group he said something different, and he was just kind of saying whatever he felt like at the time. It was just kind of expounding. He's like, whatever he says is like pure gold, basically. So he was just kind of spitting. And and so before we got to talk to him, like when we were getting kind of close to the front of the line, there was a big crowd that was forming and just listening to what he said to everyone. And one of the things I remember him saying was that kind of spoke to me was that he said single-pointed meditation, shamatha, and mindfulness meditation, vipassana, are very, very potent and very impactful and powerful practices. And if you do them over long periods of time, then eventually you'll start to see little changes in your own life. And slowly, it's a process of slow integration. And over a period of like years, like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, then you'll begin to see your own mind begin to shift and change, and you'll have a different perspective. And that really kind of spoke to me because I've been thinking about meditation and mind training in a more immediate fashion, like that instantaneous enlightenment sort of experience, and just getting kind of launched into some, transcendental space.
Yeah.
But it's really a long-term path, and it's something that happens over long periods of time with
it's about becoming comfortable in your own skin, comfortable with your own thought life, choosing what thoughts, choosing happiness over sadness, getting better at that, And I have a diagnosis of depression and anxiety, right? So I'm constantly having to choose my thoughts wisely. And me and Malcolm both work here at the San Antonio Clubhouse, and sometimes people that have a diagnosis, all the medication in the world doesn't help. You have to learn how to live with your illness, right? And there are people that suffer from schizophrenia that when they're walking down the road, they think they see a huge snake, but really it's a crack in the road. So their mind is giving them false information. And so they have to choose this thought of, what's the chances of there being a 30-foot python opposed to a crack in the road? I'm going to choose it's a crack in the road, What's the chances of somebody breaking into my apartment and putting cameras everywhere and putting me on a reality show? I'm going to think that I'm not as important as that somebody would take the time to break into my house and put cameras everywhere. And my life isn't so cool that 30 million people want to watch me fold my underwear every night to put me on a reality show, right? So if you can see in an extreme case where somebody is getting wrong information and they're able to use mindfulness to improve their lives through mental illness, how much so should we cherish this teaching of learning how to control our own thoughts and our own minds, and how much more beneficial to us that are halfway in a state of mind where our mind is giving us normal information, that we're that much far ahead that we can improve our thought life. Me and Diane went to a couple of years ago, went to South Padre Island, and I'd never been to South Padre Island. Have y'all been to South Padre? Yeah, that's a party place, right? Huh? So I'm a recovering alcoholic. I got there and I got this thought in my head that everybody else there was partying and they could drink, but I couldn't. I was the only recovering alcoholic, and they film Girls Gone Wild there. There's like parties every night there. There's like people hanging off of balconies, and here I am, the only one there not drinking, right? And it was like a worm in my brain. Like, I couldn't be happy. I couldn't enjoy Diane. And she tried to go rent bicycles for us, and we had these bikes, and we rode all over the island and everything, and she kept trying to pull me out of it. But everybody else gets to party. I don't get to party. Everybody else is drinking. I don't get to. I come to South Padre Island. I came to party, and it just ruined it. Like, I ruined it for myself and ruined it for her, I hope now, after study and meditation and practice and getting to know myself a little better, the next time we go to South Padre, I'll be able to say, man, what a beautiful sun, what a beautiful sky, what a wonderful time to spend with my wife. This is awesome, the ocean, the bicycle, and be happy. But it takes time, little by little, working on that, not letting the mind trick you into being unhappy. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, guys.
That's why you go to North Padre Island.
Go to North Padre.
Yeah, go to PA. It's less aggressive.
Can anybody think of a time like that when you kind of created your own hell, and if you could go back and do it differently now, you probably would? Huh?
I couldn't even choose one or something.
Right?
We all have similar experiences like that, maybe through high school.
Yeah.
I remember times where you put in so much weight into what you thought other people saw you as, when really everyone was thinking the same thing about themselves. What does everyone else think? Well, everyone else is too busy thinking about themselves. They don't even notice it.
Thank you. Absolutely.
That's a good shot.
Yeah.
High school sucks.
Yeah.
I loved high school. I hardly ever went.
I liked it, but that was in the 70s,
Yeah.
Yeah, that must
seizure, post, whatever.
Yeah.
As long as you're putting in the work, you're doing it right.
Mm.
Doesn't have to feel spectacular.
Yeah.
But he said, "Hey, well, this, if you're doing it this way,
He gave Malcolm a secret teaching,
Yeah.
but he can't share it with us.
Yeah. No, I mean, he didn't, like, when I was in his presence, he didn't say anything specifically about, I think I had a question somewhat like that, but I didn't really get to ask him any questions.
That is a good question, though.
That is a good question, but one thing I think he would say would be, like, one way to do it wrong would be to do it, like, unskillfully, which, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of different right ways to do meditation. And there's a lot of different, like Kylie said, secret teachings and advanced teachings. And really, I mean, like, I was just reading about, like, well, like, the Dalai Lama, his tradition, he comes from a tantric, like, lineage of Tantra, basically, which is, like, really high-level teachings that are several kind of steps removed from the basic teachings that the Buddha taught. And so it gets really advanced and really heady, and there's a lot of very, like, confusing practices that involve, like, you know, indulging in, like, poisonous things and then purifying them. So it's like you wouldn't be able to do that. That wouldn't be helpful to you at all if you weren't a skillful practitioner. So if you jumped right into the tantric practice and were trying to do, like, you know, self-deprivation meditation, or, like, you know, indulgent meditation, or even like
More advanced.
yeah,
things.
even like, yeah, exactly. Even like advanced visualization techniques, like, that would be dangerous to you.
Like, that's something you have to work up.
Exactly,
towards.
yes. You have to work up to it. You can't just skip the path and shortcut to the top. So that's why he was saying, like, single pointed meditation and mindfulness meditation, two very, very basic, like, techniques that I do. I mean, those are, like, the two that I do, really. Like, I'm not getting to, like, the advanced. I've done other kinds of meditation, but I don't feel like I'm ready for that yet. I need to, like, put in my time with the basics first, and then kind of work up to it. So I think that would be a way that would be. People run into trouble all the time when they're given high-level teachings and they don't know how to interpret them. And
Or have you ever heard of people who, like, try to, like, do sleep paralysis, and then they just, like, bad stuff happens
Yeah.
to them?
yeah, exactly. Dream yoga is one sort of meditative practice that you do not want to jump into it. You don't want to jump into it without a teacher either. Like, you would never want to do it reading it from a book and just trying to do it by yourself. That's what one teacher told me, is that, because I asked, I was like, what about dream yoga? I heard about this thing. Like, you can practice Dharma in your sleep. And he was like, you gotta have a guru first.
Yeah.
Make sure you have